What's up, everybody? It is Izzy, and I am back again for another day of Q&A. Just as a quick note, Powerlifting to Win is working again, so if you want to check it out, go for it. And on to the first question of the day. I'm not going to lie, man. Whenever somebody asks me some variation of this question about anything, like, how important is XYZ in the grand scheme of things? Or, like, how much does it matter? What I hear you asking in my mind, and I know it's not necessarily fair, it's not necessarily true, but what I hear you asking is, how much Netflix can I watch? How many video games can I play late into the night? How much jerking off to porn can I do at 4 a.m. before it affects my gains? And the answer is 0. I mean, that's how this process works. It's multiplicative, not additive, right? So if you have a 100 out of 100 score on training, nutrition, and a 0 out of 100 score on sleep, meaning you don't sleep at all, you get 1 hour sleep a night, you will make absolutely 0 progress whatsoever. So why quantify how important it is? Instead, the only thing you should be concerned with is, how do I optimize this variable within the constraints of my life, my work, my social life, etc. That's all you should care about. But let's just assume somebody's asking this out of nerd curiosity and not trying to negotiate the price, right? They're not trying to negotiate the price of progress. They just curious. There's one study that immediately comes to mind that they did on college students, where they had one group of students restrict their sleep to 6 hours a night during weekdays, and then sleep as much as they wanted over the weekends. The other group got as much sleep as they needed every single day of the week. They had these people go on a diet. The people that had restricted sleep lost 75% lean body mass, 25% fat, and the people that got as much sleep as they wanted lost 75% fat, 25% lean body mass. Not only that, but at this point, sleep deprivation in studies is shown to increase all-cause mortality. That means any possible way you could die, it increases your chance to die that way if you don't get enough sleep. Further, it's linked to mental health disorders and everything else under the sun. Honestly, the research is clear at this point. Even if you don't care about lifting or any kind of physical performance, sleep deprivation is very bad for you across the board. Now, am I saying that I've never sacrificed sleep to get work projects done by certain deadlines, or to meet certain deadlines that basically it would not be possible for me to meet unless I restricted sleep and worked longer hours? No, I'm not saying that. Sleep deprivation, less sleep, is a tool to get more work done, but it is not sustainable, and it's not good for you. And it doesn't even matter if you're an athlete or a lifter or anything else. You're going to increase your chances of being fat, being depressed, being suicidal. You should really put a lot of effort, regardless of who you are, into the amount and the quality of the sleep that you get. I'm not going to share all of those because some of those are fairly personal, but I literally wrote down goals for every single aspect of my life. Finances, things I wanted to have, things I wanted to see, places I wanted to go, experiences I wanted to have, skills that I wanted to acquire, body weights and body fat numbers, lifting numbers that I wanted to hit. And probably the biggest one was, I wanted to create a way to make money online so that I never had to work a regular 9 to 5, and that I could go anywhere in the world and work any hours that I wanted. And that was the biggest one that came true, and that was powerlifting to win, and that's made the rest of my life possible. Well, man, number one, go see somebody about your injury. The number one thing that a lot of newer lifters do, not necessarily newer, just maybe people who are, intermediate or so, is they like to try and ignore injuries. Just wait for them to go away. And you know what? That works fine until it doesn't. Until you have the big injury that isn't ever just going to go away on its own, and it's going to be something that you have to manage for the rest of your lifting career. So it's best to get on top of this and start the habit of seeking quality help early, so you have a good relationship with a PT or a chiro or whatever it is you personally believe in, so that when things do happen, you're already prepared to handle them well. And the last thing that I'll tell you is a little Zen proverb. There was a student who asked the Zen master at a temple, "How long is it going to take me to reach enlightenment if I do everything you say?" 10 years, he said. But then the guy was upset about that. It's not fast enough. What if I try really hard? 20 years. Did you know that if you put a painted fly, like the bug, on men's urinals, that you reduce the spillage and cleanup costs by several orders of magnitude? Do you know why that is? It's because men like to aim their pee at something. So when you put a little target in the potty, they shoot at it and they stop spilling everywhere. What's my point? Don't give people more credit than they deserve. Sometimes it's just monkey see, monkey do. Human behavior is sometimes the lowest common denominator. People don't really have great reasons for some of the exercise techniques that they do. Sure, sometimes they do. Most of the time they don't. They're just copying what they saw or doing what lets them lift more weight, or it's just what they've always done, so they keep doing it. Again, don't give more credit than is actually due. What is a popular exercise you think is completely useless? Honestly, no popular exercise is completely worthless. If you progressively overload anything by enough, like you take something from 2 plates to 5 plates, you're going to see some results. That said, I think you get a lot of fatigue for very little stimulus on an above-the-knee rack pull. Some muscles seem to progress better with training to failure and some with the RIR-RP protocol. Is it fine to mix the two? Of course, you should use whatever method gives you the best progress. Look at RIR, reps in reserve, RPE, as a way to manipulate the SFR. If certain movements seem to give you a better SFR away from failure, then feel free to move away from failure. Never be married to a method over results. Marry yourself to progress and you'll go so much further. Someone requested a picture of the doggies for Valentine's Day, so here's Kona and Mellow hugging each other. Personally, no, none whatsoever. Gyms, especially like a hardcore bodybuilding gym type of, or powerlifting, strongman, which is what I would want to do if I had one. Those are very expensive in terms of the upfront capital, and they're usually not that profitable. So to some extent, it has to be a labor of love, and I am not rich enough to be dropping 6+ figures on something out of love. While your body is processing alcohol from your system, muscle protein synthesis goes to 0, fat oxidization goes to 0. So basically the entire time that you're drunk and you have alcohol in your system, no muscle is being built and no fat is being burned. There are multiple potential causes of steroid-induced acne or pimple breakouts, whatever. Typically though, it usually is changes in E2 levels, especially relative to historical baselines or levels that you've held for a relatively long amount of time. So yes, most likely it is due to fluctuating hormone levels. But again, like those of you who are more worried about your hairline and your skin quality than you are about running things the way that's best for your health, I can't help you. RTS is not a program. It's a collection of principles. It's a system. It's a way of designing programming. Anytime we're talking about practical application when it comes to programming, you have to filter it through the lens of the lifter that you're working with. So there's going to be certain lifters that need more accessory work, more hypertrophy work because of where they are in their developmental arc as a lifter. There's going to be highly advanced lifters sometimes who are at the top of their weight class, don't have a lot of room to gain more muscle or change their body composition very much, and more of their training will be geared around attacking specific weaknesses in their strength curves or being highly specific, technical work, things of that nature, because they're trying to pick up the last little, 1% improvements. Whereas when you're dealing with somebody who's 6 feet tall and 150 pounds, you need to put some weight on that boy. Knowing that calories would be equated is not enough. We need to know if the micronutrients are equated. Listen, you can't take a human and give them a diet that's purposely deficient in key micronutrients because it would never get past an ethics board. But ranchers and farmers do this all the time to study yield on their cattle. And what the research there very clearly shows is that if you are deficient enough in key micronutrients, such as the electrolytes, you can stop muscle building altogether in cattle. And granted, it's not a human being, but it's still a mammal. So we don't necessarily have research that shows the optimal levels of micronutrients in human beings, especially not bodybuilders, right? No one cares. No one cares. We care about like keeping people from getting diseases. But when you build a pound of muscle, is it just protein? No, there's magnesium, there's calcium, there's phosphorus, there's all these other things that go into building that pound of muscle. And if you don't have the building blocks for it, it won't get built. Generally not a good idea, but it's doable under certain conditions. One, can you stimulate that muscle, recover from that stimulus, and adapt by PRing in both sessions for that same movement twice a week? If so, okay, that's the most important part. Step two, can you hit the same movement twice a week without getting overuse injuries related to that movement? Something like a DB curl would probably be fine because it's not known for restricting movement anywhere, but a barbell curl twice a week, that might hurt your elbows. Third one, is this a muscle group that would benefit from being trained at different angles or focusing on different heads? The biceps, no, not really. But other muscles definitely can. For example, with the chest, you have a middle chest and upper chest, and if you're going to bench press twice a week, it probably makes more sense to have one of those sessions be an incline and the other one be a flat, because that way you're covering more ground in terms of the total muscle being trained. Well, man, the answer is exactly the same as when you asked this exact same question 2 weeks ago. Here's the thing about SARMs. If you equate doses with AAS, androgenic anabolic steroids, they are less effective at the muscle building part and have the same side effects. I was just talking to a guy from my gym who has had suppressed testosterone levels for many months now because of running a cycle of SARMs. And this is the reason why people often do SARMs, is because they think that it has less side effects than actual steroids. They don't. They're just in very low doses. It's often pretty similar to like if you said, I'm going to do a cycle of tests, and people are like, oh yeah, how much? You're like, 20 milligrams. I mean, if you're scared of needles, drugs are not for you, okay? But at the end of the day, SARMs have the same consequences as regular steroids, and they should be treated the same way. I really don't see any use for them in men. What is the most common problems you see in powerlifters? Number one, too much year-round specificity on the competition lifts, doing low bar and sumo and wide grip arch bench year-round with no breaks. And number two, ties right into this, not focusing enough on building muscle at certain points of the season. When you're far out from a meet, do some Larson pressing, do some dumbbell benching, do some high bar deep squats, do some conventional, do some deficit conventional, do some stiff legs. Build some muscle. And then the biggest one, in my opinion, is a lot of people have fear gaining weight because they don't think they're going to be competitive in the next weight class up, even though they're usually not that competitive in their current class either. In the grand scheme of things, you need to move up and fill out your leverages to be a good powerlifter. Regression isn't just due to recovery factors like nutrition and sleep. Okay, when you do volume, you accumulate something called fatigue. And if you do enough volume over time, what happens is that you keep accumulating fatigue, and it can eventually reach the point where you're accumulating fatigue faster than you're accumulating new gains in fitness. And when that happens, when that red line there is going up faster than the green line, your performance is going to go down. So there's no such thing as like, my recovery is always in check. No, like, everybody has a certain level of volume that if they do it, fatigue will increase faster than fitness and they will regress in performance. So what you're experiencing, if all the outside recovery variables are in check, is in fact a scenario where you've accumulated volume, you've accumulated fatigue, and now fatigue is rising faster than fitness, and that's why you're regressing. It's too much. The problem with a question like this is that we're just going to end up talking past each other because we don't necessarily do the same style of training. I do a push-pull legs off split, which means that I hit each of those workouts every fourth day. I also train to failure. So when you're talking about doing 8 to 10 sets of chest, is that, twice a week? Because for me, I would never, ever come close to being able to recover from 8 to 10 sets of chest twice a week. In fact, most people that train hard can't do that. Chest takes a lot of damage. So again, it's hard for me to even say anything here. You're just going to have to experiment with what works best for you. But if you're at the point where you need 10 sets for a body part in a workout, I would just consider increasing your frequency more than anything else. I know I am a very convincing Instagram doctor, but I will once again remind you, I am not a real doctor. I just play one on Instagram. Well, let me put it to you like this. There's not a lot of pro athletes that have side jobs working construction, right? But at the same time, out of like the average people in the world, some of the biggest and strongest and most jacked dudes and ladies are in the military. And I would hardly call that like a inactive sedentary job. So it's definitely not an insurmountable kind of thing. If you can only train 3 times a week, would you rather do a push-pull leg split or something like upper, lower, upper? I think if you were intermediate or below, novice level, kind of full body or upper, lower, upper is going to be better. Just something with a little bit more frequency because you don't need a full week for those muscles to recover. If you're very advanced and super strong, then yes, push-pull legs once per week can potentially work because you have a longer SRA curve. But for newer lifters, not so much the best idea. I don't know if it's because I've been on support calls for like 5 hours today, but my tolerance for the shit is really low. How is it a major limitation that you can't use steroids? Just don't use steroids. There's no limitation. You can do whatever you want. What are you talking about? What's your favorite tool, bro? The screwdriver? The hammer? How about a saw? A wrench? It's not fucking ice cream, man. They have like specific jobs that each one is meant for. You use it at the appropriate time. Like, I don't just carry around scissors when I need a fucking screwdriver and just use the scissor to get in there and turn it anyway, man. Like, come on. I don't like scissors that much. You don't have to listen to me, but don't do steroids in your early 20s. Not only is it a terrible idea from a financial perspective, from the perspective of you don't really know yet whether or not you care too much about fertility, but a lot of you have been black-pilled so fucking hard that you don't even realize your goals are achievable naturally. So you don't have to get uglier. You don't have to risk years off of your life and fertility and all these other things to even achieve the goals that you have in the first place. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars per year on the actual drugs, on the health monitoring, and in your case, you don't have to get over a phobia of needles. Your dream physique is probably possible, completely natural. You're just listening to the wrong people. You're listening to TikTok. You're listening to all these naysayers. No people that don't do shit themselves. So they tell you you can't do shit either. Go find good people to follow. I'll give you some. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, powerliftingtowin.com is working again. I'm going to start putting these Q&As on there as well as any other SBD content that I come up with. If you like the video, comment, share, all that good stuff. And have a good one, my friends. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't.